The International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Recognizing that, in accordance with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the ideal of free human beings enjoying freedom from fear and want can only be achieved if conditions are created whereby everyone may enjoy his economic, social, and cultural rights, as well as his civil and political rights. In the International Covenant on Social, Economic, Cultural Rights, it states in the preamble that in accordance with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the ideal of free human beings enjoying, they specifically use that word, enjoying freedom from fear and want, can only be achieved if conditions are created, whereby everyone may, again they use that word, enjoy his social, economic, and cultural rights. So this contract, this covenant, this declaration, if you will, acknowledges the fact that for human beings to enjoy their freedom from fear and want, that they had to create, something had to be created, a system whereby this human being could indeed enjoy his social, economic, and cultural rights. The International Covenant on Social, Economic, and Cultural Rights, Article 1. All peoples have the right of self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. Black Laws, 9th edition. Enjoy, to have, possess, and use something with satisfaction, to occupy or have the benefit of. Enjoyment, possession, and use, especially of rights or property, the exercise of a right. Black Laws, 5th edition. Pursue, to follow, prosecute, or enforce a matter judicially as a complaining party. To pursue the practice of any profession or business contemplates a course of business or professional practice, and not single isolated acts arising from unusual circumstances. Black Laws, 5th edition. Pursuit, that which one engages in as an occupation, trade, or profession, that which is followed as a continued, or at least extended and prolonged employment. To follow or chase in order to apprehend or overtake. In this covenant, it says that the human being may enjoy his social, economic, and cultural rights. Rights, that's the word that they use. That's what the human being is entitled. Now we jump into Article 1 of this covenant. Now listen to the phrases that they use and to the wording that they use. All people have the right of self-determination. So when you say people, you're referring to the legal person, only to the legal person. Now the legal person has the right of self-determination. Now, by virtue, meaning because that legal person has been given that privilege or that right, by virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status. So you can choose whatever political status you want to have. If you want to be conservative, if you want to be liberal, if you want to be NDP, if you want to be Parti Québécois, if you don't want to participate in any political party, you have that right as a legal person to determine what political party you will belong to. Now the rest of that verse says, and the people, the legal person, may freely pursue, notice that, pursue their social, economic, and cultural, now they changed the word, development. Development. Now that word pursue here means unemployment. It means to work. It means that in order for you to have any type of social, economic, or cultural whatever, you have to pursue after it, or work for it. And they title it under development. But the human being, he has his rights and freedoms. He has his social, economic, and cultural rights and freedoms that he may enjoy. Enjoy. And this has been created for him. There's a system, and that's the security of the person. That's why it's there. Now, the human being may enjoy his social, economic, and cultural rights. And the legal person has to pursue after their social, economic, and cultural development. Development. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 25. Everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and of his family, including food, clothing, housing, and medical care, and necessary social services. Article 11. The states parties to the present covenant recognize the right of everyone to an adequate standard of living for himself and his family, including adequate food, clothing, and housing, and to the continuous improvement of living conditions. Black Law's 5th edition, living, existing, surviving, or continuing in operation, also means to abide, to dwell, to reside, and literally signifies the pecuniary resources by means of which one exists. Black Law's 4th edition, living, existing, surviving, or continuing in operation, also means to abide, to dwell, to reside, and literally means the pecuniary resources by means of which one exists. In the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 25, it states that everyone has the right to a standard of living that is adequate for himself and his family, and then they go on to list and enumerate what this living consists of. Everyone has that right. In the International Covenant on Social, Economic, and Cultural Rights, Article 11, it states that the right of everyone to an adequate standard of living is recognized by these state parties. Now, it's a right again for everyone to an adequate standard of living. Now, this includes resources. To have an adequate standard of living, the word here living is describing the resources or the natural materials it will take for you to have an adequate standard. The material, the food, clothing, home, hydro, transportation. That list can keep on going on. But it is the right of everyone to have an adequate standard of all these needs. That is the right of everyone. Article 6. The state parties to the present covenant recognize the right to work, which includes the right of everyone to the opportunity to gain his living by work, which he freely chooses or accepts, and will take appropriate steps to safeguard this right. Black Laws, the 9th edition, living, one source of monetary support or resources, especially one's employment. Black Laws, 7th edition, living, one's source of monetary support or resources, especially one's employment. Everyone has the right to enjoy a living. Everyone has that right. We have that right because the earth is full of an abundance of resources. And all these resources, they belong to us, the human beings. However, the government and those in the positions of power that decided to erect and construct a commercial system, they seized on all these resources, and they did it in the name of God, on behalf of God. Nevertheless, by seizing all these resources, they removed our rights to have this. That's why these covenants are in existence right now, to protect these rights and freedoms for us. Now, everyone has the right to enjoy a living, to have their needs, material and otherwise, met. But the covenant also says that everyone has the right and the opportunity to pursue a living, to have their needs, such as material goods and food, met. Two different operations of law. The one who is pursuing is the legal person, who has been stripped of their fundamental rights, because it is no longer considered a human being under law. And therefore it has to pursue after a living. And the living here, the word living, is being used in the context of meaning unemployment or work. So everyone has the right and the opportunity to work, to have their needs and their material goods and their food. Everyone has that opportunity to express that right. But in doing so, you're not expressing your human rights and freedoms. You're expressing a right to pursue a living that's been given to a legal person. And in doing so, you're operating under the blessings that has been given to you here on earth, that was taken away from you by this commercial system, but is still there in practical application and in real-time application if you understand what you're looking at and what you're reading and what they have done in the law. Article 1, subsection 2. All peoples may, for their own ends, freely dispose of their natural wealth and resources, without prejudice to any obligations arising out of the international economic cooperation based upon the principle of mutual benefit and international law. In no case may a people be deprived of its own means of subsistence. Again, in the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, we scroll down to Article 25, and you see it written here again. Nothing in the present covenant shall be interpreted as impairing the inherent right of all peoples to enjoy and utilize fully and freely their natural wealth and resources. In the International Covenant on Social, Economic, and Cultural Rights, Article 1.2, the verse reads like this: all people, it starts off, all people, may, for their own ends, meaning for their own self, freely dispose of their natural wealth. Listen to that. Freely dispose of their natural wealth and resources without any obligation to the covenants or to any country or to any political system. All people can do that. However, they prescribe this natural wealth and resources. They take what belongs to the human being as natural wealth and they remove it from us. The government takes control of this, declaring us to be legal persons. And as we are declared legal persons, the security of that person, which represents the natural wealth, is then placed upon the legal person. However, the legal person has a fiduciary or an agent that controls this natural wealth. And this natural wealth that we are worth as human beings is used to support the systems here in Canada. And then the ones who run Canada claim that these systems that are in operation, where they've taken our wealth away from us, and redistributed it into this system, they will claim that these systems now represent or fulfill our human rights, such as the right to enjoy a living. So they will say that the welfare system, the social aid system here in Canada, it is fulfilling the fundamental right of the human being, to enjoy an adequate living. And they are producing that right for the legal person by seizing our natural wealth as human beings, which is worth so much on an individual level, one by one. But they seize that natural wealth and then they dump it into, if you will, the Canadian Consolidation Fund. And they withdraw constantly from this fund for whatever they do here in Canada. And all our rights and freedoms, and all our resources and natural wealth that is attached to the human being now is no more there for us to use. So we don't really have the choice. We cannot have the choice to enjoy a living. We are forced now to pursue after a living, because the government of Canada created a system that did this to us, that removed my natural wealth and your natural wealth. But the good news is, they had no right to do this, even though they did, and the covenants and the declaration has protected us as human beings against what they have done. And we can go and seek relief and have our fundamental rights and freedoms and have our intrinsic rights as human beings respected, and get the fiduciary agent off of our natural wealth and use that natural wealth so we can enjoy a living and we can pursue happiness and not build this commercial system for Her Majesty and pay ridiculous interest rates and pay ridiculous amounts of money upon loans to international bankers of $160 million a day off of our natural wealth that they seized from us. The Canadian Ownership and Control Determination Act. In this act, certificate means a certificate issued by the minister under this act. Control status. Control status means with respect to a person whether or not the person is Canadian controlled as determined under this act and the regulations. Informal equity. Informal equity means subject to the regulations, any interest or right to participate in or benefit from, either currently or in the future, other than by the way of formal equity, the assets, revenues, or business activities of another person. Trust property. For greater certainty, for the purpose of this act, a separate trust exists with respect to all assets, investments, or property held by a trustee under a trust instrument for the benefit of a person, group, or class of persons, notwithstanding that under the same trust instrument different assets, investments, or property are held for the benefit of a different person, group, or class of persons. Power of the minister. For the purpose of this act, where the minister is empowered to make a determination or redetermination in respect of the Canadian ownership rate of a person, that power shall include the power to adjust the Canadian ownership rate of the person on the basis of informal equity to that extent that, in the opinion of the minister, is appropriate in the circumstances.